Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. And speaking of books, I have two of my own books coming out this spring and summer. Princess Charming is a picture book, which debuts on April 19th, and Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, comes out on July 1st, and it is truly a labor of love. I hope you'll pre-order, order, and join me on tour as I go across the country. You can find out more at zibbyowens.com or bookendsmemoir.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at zibbyowens because I always post about everything. Enjoy the show. Emma Straub is the author of This Time Tomorrow. She is the New York Times bestselling author of All Adult Year, The Vacationers, Modern Lovers, and Laura Lamont's Life in Pictures, and the short story collection Other People We Married. Her books have been published in 20 countries. She and her husband own Books Are Magic, an independent bookstore in Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for coming back on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, this time to discuss This Time Tomorrow. That was a lot of this times. And
this time.
Yeah.
Hi, Zibby. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Okay. I was just raving about your cover, and it is so cool. I had the galley. It's like there's this gold line sort of swirling through it, and then even the letters, some of them are like silvery, goldy. I'm not explaining it well. Everybody should.
No, it's shimmery. It's iridescent. I begged Riverhead for that. I really wanted, because my last 4 books all had people on them in different ways. They don't all look identical, but they all had people on them. And I said to Riverhead, I was like, no people. I don't want any people. I am tired of people. And they came up with lots of great book jackets. And this is the one that I liked best. But what I love the most is that shimmer, shimmer. Because I feel like that's in a funny way, it like that feels like the book to me. Like that feels like the book.
Totally. I love it. Okay. Well, that's amazing. By the way, somebody just interviewed me about something else, and they said something like, who is your favorite character? And I was like, well, there's this woman, Alice, and, like I have this on my desk right now. Let me tell you about Alice.
Yeah.
But she is a really amazing character, and she does totally come to life in a bazillion different contexts and timelines and everything, which is like a great exercise in developing a character. Sort of, what would this character be like in all these different settings and having to relive it? So tell me about, I know this came about, your dad was sick. Tell me about the genesis for this book, and not just the part 1 where you deal with her current day, but then as the book starts time traveling.
Yeah. Sure. So I mean, you are a mom. You remember 2020. It was terrible. 2020 was terrible. And that's when I started writing this book. I was home with my kids, and my husband was at the bookstore working crazy hours. And my dad was in the hospital, and none of us thought that he would be coming out of it. He did. I should say that up top. But I had been working on a different book. I'd been working on a book that is more similar to my previous books before the pandemic. And then, from March to October of 2020, I didn't have any childcare, and I was alone with my kids 24 hours a day, basically. And my dad was in the hospital, and it was for months, and it was just horrible. And so when I finally did have childcare again, I couldn't go back to the book that I'd been writing, because it felt so foreign to me. It felt like too silly. Like it was sort of, I mean, it wasn't like just a comedy, but it felt too silly to me at the time, and just really far away from where I was mentally and emotionally. And I was talking to my dad in the hospital, and I was like, what should I do? And he was like, well, maybe you should write a book about a woman visiting her brother in the hospital. And I was like, okay. And I don't think he has any memory of that, but we did, we would sit and talk when he was able to. We would sit and talk about books and writing and ourselves and our family and our lives. And that was what I wanted to write. And so I started thinking about a woman who was a lot like me, but not entirely like me, and a man who was very much like my dad, but not entirely like my dad. And I sort of plucked us like out of our lives and isolated us in this book. Like, I mean, my parents have been married for 55 years. And in the book, Leonard is a single father. And, I have an older brother. And in the book, Alice is an only child. And I mean, so there are these major differences, but yeah, I wanted to hang out with my dad. And what I really wanted was like the version of what we were doing in the hospital that I remembered from when I was a teenager, which was like us sitting at the kitchen table where my dad had like his spot and watching Jeopardy together and like eating snacks and just smoking cigarettes and whiling away the hours. And that's really what I did. I really wrote this book just to do that. And I'd never written time travel before, but I found that it came quite naturally, because I think we've all grown up, especially those of us born in the 80s, like we were fed a steady diet of time travel. Mm-hmm. And so it felt sort of just baked in. And so it was, so that's how I wrote my autobiographical time travel novel.
Well, I love how you went back to a particular point in time here in New York, which I lived through as well. So all of the references were so familiar. So every time she went back, it started with the Crazy Eddie shirt. I was like, that is so perfect. That is so perfect. Let's bring back Crazy Eddie t-shirts. How fun would that be? I bought one on
eBay. I'm going to wear it on my book tour.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. That is so amazing. Oh my gosh. Of course they exist. I should have I shouldn't have put that past you. But it is like this certain time that we all got to experience so collectively when there was so much less to do and less to watch. And all those movies, I watched everything you referenced. And Peggy's Who Got Married. I loved that movie. And I feel like nobody's been talking about it lately. And every time you brought it, I'm like, yes.
I mean, I think that first of all, yes, I think that the book is full of pop culture in a way that none of my books have ever been before. I've always really tried. I don't know if this is a a remnant of MFA program life, but I've always felt like I want to keep culture out as much as possible. Because of course it's never the point, right? It's never the point. If you're talking about a painting that's a real painting, you should be able to describe it in a way that it feels real, whether it's real or not. And the same goes for a song or a movie or whatever. And I do love to make up cultural things, and I always have. But for this book, I just felt like I was throwing the doors open to everything. I just wanted it to be real. I wanted it to feel like if you lived through this period, you would know these movies. Mm-hmm. And this is actually what Alice would do. If Alice were a real person, she would go back and that's what she would say to her friend. She wouldn't be like, oh my God, I've never heard of time travel before. How does this work? She would be like, wait, is this Back to the Future? Are there two of me? Or is this 13 going on? What is this? Which one am I in? How does this work? And so it felt very freeing to sort of just let all that stuff pour in, because I think that the reason that people often don't want to include, real cultural references is because it dates a work so precisely. But since I was already doing that in this book, it didn't matter to me.
You got a free pass. It's okay.
Yeah,
you won't get in trouble. It's all good.
Yeah. And the New York stuff, like, and I feel like it's the same for the New York stuff that like, for people who aren't from New York or who've never been to New York, it doesn't matter to them if Gray's Papaya is a real place.
Right.
Because I describe it and tell you what it tastes like and what you can order and whatever. So it doesn't matter if it's real or not if you don't know that place. But if you do know that place, you're like, oh God, I need a hot dog for lunch.
Yeah. Totally. I love that. What I really love though is when you go back in time, when Alice goes back in time, she brings the attention to the fact that in all these movies, it's so often about the romance and so much less about the family. Although I guess in Back to the Future, there was a lot of family going on. But like that she wants to spend more time with her dad. And that is the driving force of this. Although even though you have the relationship. And then I love how you have, because it's almost like Sliding Doors meets one of these movies. Because then you see like all the other outcomes and like different kids. Like that is like I love thinking about that stuff. Like, what if I had ended up with this person? What if it had happened at a different time? Would the kids be different? All that stuff.
Well, of course, because it would be. You know what I mean? Like it would be like, I mean, I have the two children I have because those were the embryos that, you know what I mean? Like it's random. It's random who shows up in your life. And
you could argue that like those souls were destined for your family. There is that.
Maybe. Yeah, no. And
maybe they would look different.
I just think that like, it's all timing, it's all timing. Everything in life is timing in terms of the people you meet and the way you are when you find them and how you evolve. It's all based on your relationships and your jobs and all of these things that are sort of random eventually add up to your life. So it was really fun to think about Alice. And you're right, like it was, I consciously wanted to make this not about the romance. It's not like there is some romance in it.
Although thank you for those scenes.
Yeah. It's so fun. At the bookstore, we often talk about like what people love and like people love a romance. People, and not, I don't just mean romance novels, but people love sexy books, whether they're, paperback rom-coms or, high literary masterpieces. People love a sexy book. And I'm like, well, yeah, I wrote a sad book about a dad dying. That's sexy, right? Like, we all write the books that are the books that we need to write. And this is what I needed to write.
Well, I love how it kind of comes together. I feel like one of the themes at the end that you tell through Kenji is that it's so important to just address when someone is sick or when someone has died. And it seems so obvious, but it is so helpful to connect on that level and not avoid it. And I feel like if people take one thing away for people who'd always feel uncomfortable not knowing what to say to people who have lost somebody or whatever, like that is a great takeaway. Like, it's okay. You just say like, hey, how are you doing? That must have been terrible. Like, oh my gosh, lymphoma is awful or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like, it's something that I have thought about a lot. Like, I have so many friends who have lost their parents in the last couple of years. And, when I was a kid and when I was in high school, and I think I never knew what to say. And part of this book is, even though my father is still alive, is me sort of reckoning with that, with like the fact that like, you don't really understand until you find yourself in the middle of it. And then you're like, oh, fuck, I was so awkward. Like I was so afraid of saying the wrong thing that I sort of didn't say anything. And, you wish you could go back and just be like, do you want to have some pizza? Like, not just like, cause I've always been a very good note writer, like, so I always write a note, but what does that do? That doesn't do that much. Like, is it better to write a note than do nothing? Yes. But like, it's probably also better. I mean, it's like when someone has a baby, like, sure, it's great to say, congratulations. But then most people say, congratulations, can I do something? To which the new parent always says, oh, no, 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 no. When like, and now I understand you don't do that. You just show up and you drop the food off or the whatever on the doorstep.
Yep.
You wash the dishes in the sink. You hold the baby so someone can take a shower, and then you get out of there. Like it's,
yes.
I think that this is growing up, right? Like we all have to learn those things firsthand before we understand what is good to do.
And those are the things you remember the most. Like, I feel like they're always like this flurry of cards and calls or texts or whatever. But it's like, I don't know, when my husband's mom passed away, this one friend of his sent us like a banquet dinner from like the local pizza place. Yeah. And I'll just never forget like the tins and like undoing those like tinfoil edges and being like, that was so nice. Like I've never been so appreciative for pasta. Vodka sauce, which I don't even normally eat. Do you know what I mean? Like that was the nicest. I don't know. So yes. But it's a good lesson that I guess we learn as we are grown-ups.
Yeah.
But I feel like so many lessons Alice learned came from being a grown-up, right? Like even when she goes back, it's like some of those things, some of those types of people you are, they aren't clear until later what's really important and all of that. But hopefully books like these can, try to teach it, like try to share it, show, don't tell,
Yeah. We'll see.
Did you feel a sense of closure once you finished this book? Like, do you feel like it helped you process some of the stuff?
Yeah. I mean, what my therapist describes as pre-grieving, which I didn't know that was something, but, I think that, there are obviously people who lose loved ones very suddenly, where you're plunged into the, after zone totally unexpectedly. But I think often it's not that, often we see it coming and we see the cliff and we know how deep it is on the other side. And we spend years preparing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I don't know if anyone can ever be prepared. Probably not. But I definitely think that I've spent a lot of time, I mean, more than just the years, that I've been working on this book, processing this idea. And I mean, I can't say that I feel closure, but I definitely feel really happy. I feel really happy that I was able to write this book, and that for me, I mean, and that I wrote it really, truly just for me. But then the fact that my dad is still alive and could read it is an amazing additional gift that I don't take for granted for a second. And then like, when I think the thing that like really gets me always is that like, my dad has written like 20 books and they're all very scary, but he is in all of them. He is in all of them in ways small and large. He is not a serial killer, mind you. A lot of his books have serial killers in them.
Good to know.
A torturer of any kind, but he is all over his books. And I'm grateful that I have those books that are full of his brain and his thoughts and his jokes, And then I think about my kids having my books that are full of me in all of those ways. And then additionally, that they have this book now, which contains us both in a certain way. I mean, not that Alice and I are identical, and not that Leonard and my father are identical, but this is without a doubt a book that is just like an examination of our love. And that's pretty amazing, hopefully my children will appreciate it. I think they will someday, hopefully.
That's amazing. Well, now hopefully, they'll write something about you.
Yeah. Oh God, maybe. I don't know if I want that.
I know. I'm like, would I want that or would I not want that? Yeah. So will you ever go back to that other one that you abandoned?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it was a good one. I was excited about it. I had done some like research for it. Like it wasn't, like this book, This Time Tomorrow, all I had to do was just like close my eyes and like text my friends from childhood to do research, Yeah. But the book that I had been working on, I had traveled, like I had really put in some legwork. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure. We'll see. I have to go back and see if there's any life in it.
Did you have a real life Tommy type character?
Oh, hundreds of them.
Hundreds? Oh my gosh.
Well, maybe not hundreds, but I have all my diaries, and I was always in love with somebody, or like 6 somebodies. I mean, I really, I was really able to compartmentalize my affections. And so I had just crushes on everybody. Yeah. There are a lot of them.
I have my diaries too, and I haven't figured out what I should do with them all. But I like how you channeled it into that. It's very creative. I'm like, why? Hey, I'll just,
Yeah.
I took this trip with my family when I was in 8th grade to China and Japan, but I wrote it as if I was like, I don't know. I didn't sound like I was that old. But anyway, I read it to my kids, my little kids. And I was like, this is what I was like. And of course, my diary is like, here's what I had to eat on the airplane.
Yeah.
But it's another way of time travel. Because it's like I was introducing my almost 9-year-old to like my 14-year-old self. And I'm like, this is the way I spoke at that time. And it's neat to be able to, so
it's amazing.
I feel like that's another layer of what this book does so well. So yeah, it's very cool. Awesome.
So what did you eat on that airplane?
Oh, like all the stuff I still eat. They were like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't know, like, grilled chicken and a Caesar salad or, it's like ridiculous. I haven't changed at all. And I'm like, I shouldn't have eaten that cookie. And they're like, ha ha, Yeah. So maybe it wasn't such a big introduction after all. Anyway, last question. Any advice to aspiring authors?
I guess at the moment, my advice would be to write the thing that you feel most moved by, that you feel most emotionally connected to, and that you can write better than anyone else. Like whatever it is, whether it's fiction or a short story or your memoir, whatever it is, like to believe in yourself and to know that you are fully capable. Yeah. And just to have faith and do it, just to try.
Love it. Well, thank you not only for taking me back to, 1980s New York City, but also just this Alice's life and walking through Belvedere and, just the whole thing. It was such a strong sense of place. And I really feel like I ventured through someone else's shoes, which is what the best books do. So there you go. Yeah.
Anyway. Thank you so much, Zippy. Right. Always a pleasure.
You too. Hope your day goes better.
Thanks. Here's hoping.
Okay. Bye, Emma.
Bye.
Hi, Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you like this podcast, you will love my new anthology called Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids. Check it out, and you'll hear from 49 authors about all sorts of things moms don't have time to do. All the authors have been on this podcast. Also, check out my TikTok @with Zibby and Tracy, my other podcast, Sex Talk with Zibby and Tracy. Check out Moms Don't Have Time to Write on Medium. And of course, my new publishing company called Zibby Books. And now back to our daily author interview site and a quick hello from some of my kids. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Enjoy the show.